Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Nate. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about climate. So, I'm just going to jump right in. The topic today is going to be about the necessity for different levels of climate activism. So, right now, a lot of the focus that we see is largely on national legislation and trying to pass laws on the national level that can prevent mass amounts of carbon emissions and create carbon neutrality, create carbon taxes, whatever. And the idea behind this is if we pass those laws on a national level, then the industries that are currently causing the most pollution will have to stop because it'll be against the law or they'll be paying massive fines otherwise, which is all great. Um, and then the other thing that we see a lot of is articles or whatever that come out about what can you do to stop climate change or reduce your own carbon footprint, which is also great. Those are two very important things. But the problem is that those are only two of the many levels of climate activism that we all need to be involved in right now. So the problem of climate change and global warming is something that is not just on the individual level and it's not just on the national level, but it reaches every level of our lives. So what I want to talk to you about today is about what we can do to reach these other levels and why doing so is important. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start from the personal level and work outward, and like move the scope outward to talk about what the other levels are, and we'll go from there. So the first one is the personal level. So as I mentioned, we see a lot of articles about this. A lot of people are conscious about their effect on climate and what their carbon footprint is. They try to reduce it by maybe driving less, maybe getting a hybrid or an electric car, maybe getting solar panels on your roof, maybe turning off the lights when you leave the room, all these kind of little things, which are very important, and we all know that if we all did those things, it would create a huge impact, and that's why we do them, is because we have to be, we can only take responsibility for ourselves. And so that's great. But moving further than that, the next step is our household. So for a lot of us, we may be the only ones living in our household, and so that's the same thing, the personal and the household level. But for people who are living with roommates or their families or whatever, and maybe everyone else isn't on board with that yet, or there's certain things in the house that are shared that aren't as eco-friendly as they could be, so that's the next level that we can do, is to maybe hold a house meeting or just talk to people about little things that we can do in our household to try to reduce our impact. And again, this applies to the same thing on the personal level. It would be great if we all did this because this would make a huge impact. But again, we can only take responsibility for ourselves and try to influence next up immediately around us. So the next level is community. So if we look around our communities and our neighborhoods and maybe try to see what our city can be doing or what we can do to create like some kind of community effort to try to reduce any footprint that we can, just looking around the community to see what we can do. This is one of the topics that I don't see emphasized as much, where the focus on either we have to pass national legislation or I know you're overwhelmed with this problem, but here's what you can do kind of focus. So this is where I'm starting to get to, is we need to focus on these middle levels as well. They're very important, and if we want to achieve the goals of trying to reduce the impact of climate by 2030 or even 2050, we need to start focusing on these other levels as well. After community then goes up to local businesses. So you can go around to your Main Street businesses and start talking to them about what they can do to reduce their impact. Maybe they can run less lights or get better light bulbs, or maybe they can like switch to a different source of like where they get their shipments from, or who knows, there's plenty of things obviously, but this is something that if all of us who were taking the time out of our day to make these little changes in our life, and we really care and really want to make this difference, that maybe we can spend a little extra time going out to local businesses in our communities and trying to talk to them about what they can do. And so we're slowly building up this movement from the bottom up of not just me, but my household, my community, my local businesses, so on and so forth, as I'll get to. And so the idea is that we are creating a movement from bottom up and top down, because you can go down from the national level as well. And basically we're solving the problem from all angles at one period of time so that we can accomplish the most, especially given the limited time frame that we have in the climate crisis right now. So then the next thing is state level. So this goes back to legislation as well, and so this can you could start to look at this as like maybe a top-down kind of, so you go from national to looking at state legislation. So the idea is that not only do we need to pass legislation for our country, but while we're waiting for those kind of things to go through Congress, and we're waiting for those kind of things to, play their course and take the time that it does, we can also be trying to focus on our state and try to talk to our state representatives and our governors and see what we can try to influence them to change in the state, because that's 1/50th of the country. And so if we can work on our communities all together, and then also our state is changing legislation to help the businesses in our state and everything, and even like the state-run operations like public transportation or whatever, to try to reduce their footprint, then again we're making a larger impact all at once. Then it goes up to the national level, which again I've already talked on is great. We need to pass this national legislation, and it probably is the most effective and most important one out of all of these, but again we need to be focusing on all of them. But the reason that national legislation is so important is because it can change all of the industries within the USA, which is the second largest carbon emitter in the world, country-wise. So that's something that we can be doing that's really important, is that national legislation, because that can create a huge impact in one change, one bill being passed. And so that's why there is a lot of focus on that. But again, we need to focus on the other things. So then going up for that is corporations. Now this one is probably the hardest one, which is why a lot of people are focusing on the national level to try to affect the corporations, because corporations want money, and largely they're not going to be concerned with anything other than that. So if doing something is going to hurt their profits, they're probably not going to do it. But at the same time, there are a lot of things that corporations can do that actually won't hurt their profits by switching over to sustainable energy. So it's our job to do the research, if we really care about this, to do the research and figure out what they can do and how we can make sure that it doesn't, lose them money, and present these solutions to the corporations themselves so that it can be solved on that level as well. And then lastly is the global level. So the global level is just basically, you think about like the UN or something, but also all of the all of the governments globally for the countries worldwide. So trying to talk to maybe international organizations that advocate for climate activism and whatnot. So by doing that, we can also reach a global scale and get this message out globally and try to spread awareness as well through individually to people globally, but also trying to do that on a more official scale. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, is just how important it is that we stress climate activism on all levels, not just the individual level, not just the national legislation level. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe down below. Leave any comments or suggestions for next videos. And as always, I will link my blog in the description, and you can check that out where I talk about stuff like this all the time. So thanks, and have a great one.